Hi, folks. Wanted to say a few words about the Ottoman Empire, which is one of the Asian um, early modern societies that we're covering this week that faces challenges due to the expansion of Western power um, and ultimately suffers a loss in wealth and influence and then territory. The Ottomans, I think, um, face this problem of decline due to a number of important reasons. First of all, I think they're overconfident. By 1500, the point in which we start this course, the Ottomans had built one of the largest empires in the world. They have a run of 10 competent sultans who had expanded out of Asia Minor until the Ottoman world stretches from the borders of Persia or Iran all the way to the Atlantic, all of North Africa, Arabia, Egypt, the Near East, Anatolia, and much of Europe had become Ottoman territory. And the Ottomans had an unbeatable army in their early period. The Sultan's slave army, the Janissaries, basically is unstoppable and pushes Ottoman territorial advances all the way to the gates of Vienna at one point. And so the Ottomans are wealthier, more sophisticated than any European power during the heights of their empire's existence. The palace in Istanbul, the Koptaki Palace, covered acres and acres of ground. And when Western visitors went there, they were astounded at the wealth and opulence of the Ottoman sultans, the luxury of their dress, the gold and gems and other riches that are everywhere. And they would sometimes be given tours of the palace, sometimes by the Sultan himself if you were an important enough European visitor. And literally they were shown rooms that were full of treasure from earlier periods in Ottoman history. You might have heaps of gold that had been taken by the Sultan's great-grandfather. And sometimes these visitors were told that really the government didn't know what to do with all of this. And so it's understandable that the Ottomans don't see these relatively backward, relatively unsophisticated Westerners as that much of a threat. But over time, the power of the West increases, and the Ottomans find themselves in trouble. Their empire has not industrialized like the West, and efforts to catch up oftentimes aren't enough. The Ottoman education system, the madrasas, had become more old-fashioned and more traditional, and efforts to include new subjects that would help with economic expansion, more science, more math, are resisted by the mullahs, the clerics that run these institutions. They don't want to change. Likewise, the Ottoman army, the slave army, the Janissaries, was initially reluctant to use modern weaponry. It's like, we don't want to adopt firearms when we were trained to use these traditional weapons that we're more comfortable with. And eventually the sultans actually ordered the Janissaries to work as firemen because they were no longer regularly campaigning. The empire wasn't expanding anymore. So we're paying and feeding and housing this large force that really has nothing to do and is getting into trouble. And so the Sultan ordered the Janissaries to work as fire companies to put out fires. And ironically, it turned out that the Janissaries start setting the fires and then demanding bribes to put out the fires that they started. And so eventually the Janissaries have to be disbanded violently. But you see over time what had been this thriving society becoming really increasingly weakened and at the mercy of the European great powers. And by the 18th and 19th centuries, people refer to the Ottoman Empire as the sick man of Europe. It's this perennially sort of troubled empire that, ironically, different European powers end up propping up. Because if the Ottoman Empire collapses, then that could strengthen Russia or other rival powers. And so the Ottomans are actually being supported ultimately by these European interests. So Hope that your week 2 has gone well. Have a good weekend, and I'll talk to you later.